Singapore Airlines says that it could be forced to lay up to 2,400 staff because of COVID-19. The airline says that it's affected by what it calls a long road to recovery in an industry that's been battered severely. Now, the cuts would be part of 4,300 positions that will go as the national carrier downsizes. All three of its carriers would be affected: Singapore Airlines, SilkAir and Scoot. Around 1,900 positions were removed by a recruitment freeze, natural attrition and voluntary departure schemes. SIA says that these have allowed it to reduce potential job cuts to around 2,400 in Singapore and across its overseas stations. The airline expects to operate at under 50% of capacity by the end of the current financial year. It says global passenger traffic is not expected to return to previous levels until around the year 2024. Now, SIA says that it is in a particularly vulnerable position because it doesn't have a domestic market. Well, for more, let's speak with Matt Driskill. He's editor of Asian Aviation. Matt, good evening. Let's start with some number crunching. 4,300 positions across the entire SIA group, but the potential job cuts, they might be reduced to around 2,400. Now, SIA, of course, has tens of thousands of employees on its payroll, but what do these numbers tell you about how the airline is streamlining its staff strength now? What happens if the situation gets worse?
Very simply, if the situation gets worse, and let me go back to the beginning of this. This is not an aviation-caused problem. The problem is a global pandemic of COVID, the COVID-19 virus, and it's affecting every single part of the travel chain. So it's not just Singapore Airlines, it's the hotels, it's the car rental companies, it's anyone that's connected with travel. Singapore Airlines is a great brand. It's a great company. I love flying it. I've flown it many times in first class, in business class, in coach, or economy class. But the problem is the longer this virus continues and the longer that countries shut down their borders, then that's going to increase the pain for Singapore Airlines, as we've discussed, because it has no domestic market. You're not going to fly from Changi to Bukit Timah or to where my son goes to school in the west of the island. I mean, there's just simply no domestic market. But again, Singapore Airlines, it's a great company. It's a great brand. It will return when international travel returns. But all of that depends on when countries ease the border restrictions and the quarantines.
Right. So, Matt, saying that, it will take some time for travel demand to return. And from your own forecast, then, how much longer do you think it will take before we actually see some sort of sustained pickup in global travel?
You sound a little bit like my wife, and she's probably watching in the other room. I wish I had that answer because I don't have all the answers, as I often tell her, because, again, it all depends on the virus. International travel will return when it's safe to return. And I have to say, organizations like IATA, the International Air Transport Association, ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, they have been doing a great job of trying to convince governments and everybody else that it actually is safe to travel. I mean, it's very rare. There are instances where it happens, but it is very rare to catch COVID-19 when you get on an airplane. Having said that, the various governments, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in the United States, whether it's in Singapore or Cambodia or Japan or wherever, their preference, the government's preference, are to keep things shut. So when will everything return? I have no idea. It's if and when the scientists, who I hope are really, really smart and work really, really hard, when they come up with a vaccine that is safe and that is effective and can prevent all of this, that's when air travel will return.
Matt, it may be nigh impossible to make a prediction in terms of, sort of looking into that crystal ball and wondering when recovery will happen. But is recovery going to be reliant upon reputation? Because you talked about the SIA brand having that. Is that what's going to sort of make the difference?
I think so. I mean, that's a wonderful question. It's a really good question because I think people will, right now, people are looking for trust. They're looking for brands that they can depend on. And as I said earlier, Singapore Airlines is a great brand. I mean, I will fly Singapore Airlines anytime, over and I won't mention any names on air right now, but especially over certain low-cost carriers. But absolutely, people are going to look for things that not just airlines, but other companies. They're going to put their trust in those companies, and Singapore Airlines is a company that you can trust, I think.
So reputation indeed, up there. Thank you so much, Matt, for speaking to us and sharing your insights. Matt Driskill there, editor of Asian Aviation.